But the problem is, atheist commentators on Bart Ehrman don't know what Bart Ehrman is talking about. That's the problem. And Muslims who use Bart Ehrman don't know what Bart Ehrman's saying. And why do I know this, ladies and gentlemen? Because I know the teachings of Dr. Bruce Metzger.
I'm not totally sure about your doctrine of the magisterium. How do you hold that? Can you just explain how you conceive that? Because there's certain things that you've said that seem to go against that. Ecumenicism.
So the question is, and I'm taking questions about Christianity. So if you've got a question about Christianity, feel free to ask them. The question is, what's my understanding of the Roman Catholic concept of the magisterium? I say it is a Roman Catholic dogma, and faithful Roman Catholics should hold to it, but I'm not a Roman Catholic. I think the magisterium is something that every Christian should hear as a good counsellor, but it's not binding on anyone except a Roman Catholic. There is a magisterial teaching of the Church, apostolic, that is consistent and can be traced for 2,000 years. That teaching, wherever it is historically consistent and universal, should be embraced by all Christians as the ancient apostolic faith. So that's my answer to your question. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, about Christianity or what I just spoke about?
Yes, in Numbers, Moses presents a man to the Lord and says, "Dear Lord, this man has been caught gathering sticks on the Sabbath. What shall we do with him?" You've heard of Numbers?
Yeah, I know what Numbers is.
Okay. The Lord said, "Take him out, gather the villagers together and stone him to death." What sort of creature or person does that?
Okay, so the question is, Mosaic law appears to our modern sensibilities as barbaric.
That's putting
And
it mildly,
therefore,
sir.
no, I'm answering your question. I'm not having a debate with you. No, well, let me
giving you-
answer your question.
Yeah, I'm not
Be
trying-
polite, because when other people ask,
Would
I'm
you
going to
like
ask
me
you
to
to be
leave?
quiet. You can do if you want, it's up to you.
Would you like me to leave?
No, you can stay for your answer.
All I said
So,
was it's
the
putting it
question
mildly.
is, ladies and gentlemen, Mosaic law seems barbaric to our sensibilities. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an anti-Christian trope of modern atheists. Because modern atheists are grotesquely ignorant in their discourse about Christianity. When Christians go onto the street, they don't say to people that we should follow Mosaic law. They say to people that we should follow Christ. Because as Christians, we believe in a new covenant, and we follow a new covenant proclaimed by Jesus Christ. We are not calling people to embrace the old covenant with the Mosaic law. We are calling people to embrace the new covenant spoken of by Jesus Christ. I do not feel, as a Christian, that I need to jump through the hoops of modern atheists and their ignorant criticisms of Christianity. Your ignorance of how Christians read the Bible is your problem. It is the problem of the atheists and their lack of education.
It's in the Bible, it's not ignorance.
God commanded the Jews to keep the old covenant. Why? So that they would have a distinct identity from all the nations around them.
The Old Testament.
And it was so important that they had a unique and distinct identity that breaking the Sabbath was subject to the penalty of death. And I believe it, and I confess it, and I do not deny it, and I am not ashamed of it. But as a Christian, do I say that people should be killed today for breaking the Sabbath? No. And why not?
Why?
Is it because we Christians don't keep the Sabbath? No, we do. It is because we Christians live in a new covenant and the Mosaic law is embraced in a much bigger, a much wider covenant in which Gentiles and Jews form one people, a new humanity in Christ. Any other questions about Christianity? Any questions going once? Any questions going twice? Okay, if you've got another question, feel free.
Do you renounce the Old Testament then?
Okay.
Do you?
So the question is, do I as a Christian renounce the Old Testament? The answer to this question is objectively and absolutely no. The Old Testament is a part of the New Covenant, and it is interpreted
But it's full of
through the
genocide, misogyny
rubrics.
and murder.
Be quiet, sir, and show some manners. Don't interrupt.
earlier.
You asked a question, listen to the answer. Christians embrace the New Covenant, and we interpret the Old Testament through the rubrics of the New Covenant. We do not interpret it as the Jews did. We interpret it as the first apostolic Jews did. And by it is their interpretation, a Second Temple Jewish interpretation, that we interpret the Old Testament as part of the New Covenant. I say to all of you new atheists who listen to the likes of Christopher Hitchens, get yourself a better teacher. Get yourself a better teacher than Sam Harris.
Burn him.
Get yourself a better teacher than Burnham.
Hardly knew, sir.
Get yourself a better teacher than Richard Dawkins. They all
Richard Dawkins,
would fail a GCSE in religion. Any other questions about Christianity, ladies and gentlemen?
Sir, one person. What about Bart Ehrman?
What question? What's the question?
I'm assuming that you're a Christian.
Yes,
I'm assuming that you're a Bible-believing Christian that believes in Jesus.
Oh yeah.
I believe in Jesus. Go on.
Fine, okay, but Bart Ehrman used to be a Bible-believing Christian.
Yep.
that believed in- And now, from his studies, he's showing that it's, or his interpretation, which I tend to agree with, is
Yep.
it's not actually...
What's the question?
So no, you're basically saying, you're saying ignore Richard Dawkins, ignore all these people.
What's the question?
So I'm basically saying, what about Bart Ehrman?
Okay, so what about Bart Ehrman?
So should people
Yeah.
ignore Bart Ehrman?
So, ladies and gentlemen, should we ignore Bart Ehrman? When Bart Ehrman is talking about textual variants, no, we shouldn't. Why? Because Bart Ehrman knows what he's talking about. But the problem is, atheist commentators on Bart Ehrman don't know what Bart Ehrman is talking about. That's the problem. And Muslims who use Bart Ehrman don't know what Bart Ehrman's saying. And why do I know this, ladies and gentlemen? Because I know the teachings of Dr. Bruce Metzger. And Dr. Bruce Metzger was the teacher of Dr. Bart Ehrman. Dr. Bart Ehrman did not leave the Christian faith because of textual variants. He said that publicly on record. He left the Christian faith because philosophically he could not handle the problem of evil. So in other words, textual variants in the Bible pose no problem to the faith of Dr. Bruce Metzger, who died as a Christian. They did not pose any problems to the faith of Dr. Daniel Wallace, who is alive and a Christian. They do not, learn some manners, sir, listen to the answer. They do not pose any problems to the faith of Dr. James White, who is a Christian. They did not pose any problems to Dr. Bart Ehrman when he was a Christian. And do you know why, ladies and gentlemen? Because all four of those scholars that I have named, all of them agree that textual variants in the Bible do not pose any danger to any core Christian belief. They do not damage any Christian doctrine. And furthermore, the variants in the New Testament actually demonstrate that the New Testament has been very well preserved. That is actually what is shown by textual variants, and that is why Dr. Bart Ehrman was not challenged by the existence of textual variants when he was a Christian. Any other questions about the Christian faith? No? No? Let someone else ask a question, then I'll come back to you. Go on, Luca.
So